Hello and welcome back to the TV archive. We like these long breaks. I say we. I keep roping Andrew into this. It's mostly my fault. But you know what I think of is that when we do get to recording these and putting them out, they feel more like events. You know, um, it's like a big moment when the TV archive episode comes out. Today we are talking about 1994. Um, We talked about how 1993 was a bit of a lesser year in the context of the 90s, especially coming off 92. And then we're right back up, in my opinion, with 94. I think there's maybe a couple late 90s years that could challenge it for the best year of the 90s, but it's going to be a tough one to top, especially for this era of television. It's definitely the best that we've covered so far, I think. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. Um, 92, I think, was pretty much the high watermark for me up to this point. What this one has is it's pretty close at the top, and you have all like it's basically accumulating more and more great shows that are kind of in their run, and that's what you're starting to see is just a little bit more depth. And I think that's kind of the advantage that we have for this time around.
I would say a lot of a bit more depth. Um, like and that's kind of reflected in how long it took me to do all the watching. I had usually I've had between 5 to 8 shows that I would consider when we do our top fives. Sometimes I've ended up with no honorable mentions. This year it was 12. So big jump, big jump. So yeah, I'm gonna jump into talking about the big debuts for the year, as we always do. 93 was a massive year for debuts. This year's not quite as big, but still quite a few notable ones. The two big ones in the US really are Friends, which is the obvious one, and ER as well, which has its own sort of I don't say cult following, but it's kind of the most respected of those like medical dramas, especially those early seasons with Clooney. Um, you also had The Critic from writers of The Simpsons, which was one of the two shows I've got written down as that I didn't get to that I would have liked to, because I feel like I probably would have liked it as a film buff. Um, and then My So-Called Life as well, so another sort of cult following kind of show. And Spider-Man, the animated series, which not quite as popular as maybe Batman or X-Men, the animated series that we've mentioned previously, but still I thought worth mentioning. And quite a big year for British comedy as well. Some big debuts here. You got The Vicar of Dibley, Dawn French's iconic program, The Fast Show, which is a sketch show that I'm really fond of. And then in terms of, a character being introduced to the small screen, Alan Partridge gets his debut this year in two different shows. The Day to Day was his actual debut, and then he got his own show later in the year, Knowing Me, Knowing You, with Alan Partridge. So, not as big in terms of the critically acclaimed darlings. Like, we're not having an X-Files debut this year, but um, quite a lot of notable shows, I think.
Yeah, and I guess let's talk a bit about the ratings. My usual roundup. 1994, Seinfeld has claimed the throne at the top for the rest of its run. It's just basically going to be duking it out with ER, essentially, as the juggernauts. Um, but after that, you get like Home Improvement, Grace Under Fire. Probably the one that surprised me the most is like one that's showing up all the time near the top. I guess it's just one of those ones. Um, and then also NYPD Blue was huge this year as well. So you get a bit of a mix between like the sitcoms and then the dramas, medical, police. So a little bit of a flavor between all those. So, yeah, that's what we got for this situation and the ratings this year.
I've never even heard of Grace Under Fire. I don't even know what that is.
Hey baby, I hear the blues are calling, toss salads and scrambled eggs.
So, we'll get into our lists. I'll go first. My number 5 is Dinosaurs Season 4, Part 1. This is a weird one to categorize. It's one of the weirder ones that I've come across because you had the 7 episodes that came out this year, including the very famous finale, and then you had an additional 7 episodes released in 1995 in syndication. So these are the final traditionally aired episodes of the show. And it does feature that classic humor we've come to expect, with that little satirical bite. Obviously, with the finale, it's the scales are tipped a bit. It's more dark. It's embracing everything that it's almost been touching on and almost just laying it out as this is what is going to happen, if a lot of these issues aren't solved. Um, yeah, it's the signature episode of this, not only the season but the entire show. There are a lot of people who the only thing they know about Dinosaurs is that it has a really sad ending. um, so I obviously knew about it going in, but in the context of watching the show, it hit even harder as you can imagine when you spent all this time getting to know these characters, getting to live in this warm, fuzzy tone, and just watching the credits with the snowed over exterior of the house is whew, it's heavy, man. Um, Aside from that, you get another classic episode in the greatest story ever sold, which in that episode, the baby keeps everyone keeps asking a question, why, and then they give an answer, but why, and give an answer, but why, and it causes mass hysteria and pandemonium, and the entire world order is is completely upended, which is just a great concept for an episode. Um, but yeah, really, really solid show. Probably the best season. It gets an 8.1 out of 10 at the number 5 spot, which shows you the strength of this year because that would have been enough to win in, I think, 91. And it certainly would have been in the top 3 most years, but lands at number 5 this year. Dinosaurs Season 4, Part 1, I
Well,
guess, is what we're going to call it.
very nice. I have that Y episode ingrained in my mind. It's between that and the Exorcist one as the ones from my childhood that just seared into my brain, I guess. Um, I'm going to be dipping into another one from my childhood, though, for my number 5. And I'm not sure how much this crossed over your way or not, but we'll see. It's season 1 of The Magic School Bus. Every year or two, there's like another show I loved growing up that came out, and this time's basically gives you exactly what the title promises about a magic school bus. Class and their teacher learn their lessons through literal magical adventures, like shrinking themselves to the size of an insect, or turning into a spaceship and traveling the solar system. Sounds ridiculous, but really does a surprisingly great job of being amusing and entertaining, but actually explaining like these real things about the world in an accessible way. And I am probably willing to bet I learned more about science in this show, or at least recall facts than I did in my school days. So many memorable episodes this season. The solar system one, digestive system, the bakery, the garden, the ants. If you know the show, you know all those. Easily one of the most beloved for kids from my time, and had to sneak it in there.
Yeah, that's one I'm aware of but never watched. So there you go. You've put it on my radar. My number 4, I'm going to be sticking with shows that I've already had on lists previously. I won't be the whole way. There's going to be a new show in here. Um, my number 4 is Seinfeld season 6. Might be a bit shocking because it was my number 1 in 1993, but it's a bit of a strange season to evaluate season 6. I think season 4 and 5 are generally considered the peak of the show. I can't speak totally to that because I've not seen the final 3 seasons, but from what I've seen, I would agree. Um, and yes, this year is a much stronger field. I still think this is a step down from the first 2 seasons, but only slightly. There is a lack of like truly memorable episodes, which I think is the biggest gripe against it. But the general quality level is pretty consistently great. They've hit a really comfortable stride with this season. And I think that's what I would say. It's sort of like the coziest season of Seinfeld so far, where you're just in it with the characters. So easy to watch. You can just watch like 5 episodes in one sitting and not even think about it. Um, yeah, I think the three that really stand out for me are the Pledge Drive, the Switch, and the Jimmy. Those 3 episodes are the ones that are really ingrained in my head. But there are ones that I scored quite highly and really enjoyed that I can't really remember now, which has not been the case for the last few seasons. And I think that's just because, I don't know, maybe they're not going for the big swing episodes as much this season as they have been. And it's more kind of about just being around these characters. Um, yeah, still really good. Still one of the best comedies on TV at this time. And it also is at an 8.1 for me. Seinfeld season 6. So yeah, really good, but just not quite at the high standard of the previous 2 seasons.
Well, I won't be talking about that quite yet, but you've definitely stolen some of my comments, so we'll get there. My number four is the second season of a show we both had last year, The X-Files. Seems like this is generally considered a step up from the first. I can see that in some ways, not in every way. This season might be a little more consistent, I would say. Only a couple episodes that feel subpar. But on the flip side, I think I might have more highs in the first, especially for the standalone stories. This time around, you've got like a few multi-episode arcs that pop up throughout, and like those tend to be the stronger entries this time around, in my opinion, building on the existing narrative thread. Colony is a really cool episode in there about like these identical people that seemingly being hunted down. Also touches more on like the lore of Mulder's past, which I always find fascinating. There's One Breath. It's a very emotional episode centered on like the disappearance of Scully. And I really like the evolution of Skinner as a secondary character in the show. And I think he brings an awesome flavor as their boss, who like deep down has good intentions, but needs to deal with like the bureaucracy going on, the push and pull just as much as they do, and like the threats that are going on beyond any of the individuals. Overall, I think it's the mythology that is stronger this time around, and it's another solid season of sci-fi drama. Just have three that I like a bit better.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you said. But it's not my number three. You thought I was going there, didn't you? My number three is The Kingdom season 1. Now, there is a chance that some of you won't know what The Kingdom is, but I imagine a lot of you will. It is a Lars von Trier TV series. Um, it is absolutely bonkers. It makes Twin Peaks look like Friends. It is and I would say the first season is the peak. It feels the most grounded. It feels the most character focused. We are introduced to a haunted hospital and an ensemble of kooky characters. Twin Peaks is the obvious example for this sort of Scandinavian mystery drama with supernatural elements. But it's still quintessentially Lars von Trier. There is a cliffhanger in the season finale, which is probably the most insane thing I have seen on a TV show. And I know I know that is a bold claim, but I couldn't believe what I had just seen, and I it took me days to process it. Um, it is very disturbing and shocking, but it is also, you know, really well built tension, really strong characters, and some really good dark comedy, especially through its powerhouse lead actor pronunciation. Do I even try? No, I'm not going to. You can look him up. He plays Dr. Helmer, um, and that sort of Dane-hating Swedish doctor coming in from the out, it adds a lot of really good comedy from his like deadpan reactions to some really weird stuff. Um, And yeah, it's a little slow paced. Like the episodes are really long. Is like the only thing I would say. They're like 75 minutes each. There's only four episodes, but I think that I think it would almost be paced a bit better if it was 5 hour long episodes. I know that's just a little gripe, but that's just me, and that's just what I'm used to in watching TV. But yeah, it is really good. And if you haven't seen it and you're into your like supernatural, spooky, horror, drama, mystery kind of stuff, I would definitely recommend it. It gets an 8.3, which is one of the highest scores I've given, and it's only at number three. So highly recommend The Kingdom season one.
And they, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a new series for that in the past couple of years, wasn't there? Was there not?
Yes, so they did season two in 97, and then basically right after that, because the two lead actors were both in their 60s or 70s, and they both died in the space of like a couple months. So they left it, and then they came back with a whole new characters, bringing some new characters in as well. But yeah, that's why it kind of ended prematurely. But yeah, Exodus came out 2022, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Very nice. That's one I did not get around to, but I plan to cover that entire series eventually. Maybe double check there's not anything more to come. um, Gonna go with my number three, which is one you already spoke about, which is season 6 of Seinfeld. Another solid season. I do consider it, like you, a bit of a step down from 4 and 5. Not as many top tier classic episodes. Um, Maybe even in comparison to some of the ones that I know to come. Um, there's still lots to like, though. There was behind the scenes turnover this season, losing the director who had done every episode but the pilot, and a couple of writers too, apparently. So maybe that's a little bit of what we're picking up on there. I don't know. Still, the cast, they have the roles down to a science at this point. You get things like George working for the Yankees now. Bryan Cranston shows up as Tim Watley a few times, and he's great. If I were to single out a couple episodes, probably The Switch, where Jerry and George scheme to switch roommates. They're dating, and the Jimmy, one of the Tim Watley episodes. So yeah, there's still lots of great stuff here. Uh, it's just probably more a testament to the strength of what else is going on in this year for me. So that's where it lands, number three, which I believe might be the first time since 1990 that it didn't crack the top two, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's something similar for me. Um, if I could just look quickly, I think it's yeah since 1990, first time it's not been in my top two, which is wild. Simpsons and Seinfeld have been dominating both our lists. Speaking of which, my number two is The Simpsons season six. Ah man, The Simpsons just keeps trucking along, consistently really, really good. This era is just so hard to top from like I mean, season two and three are great too, but season four, five, six, like going into seven, which, I know already my thoughts on that, not to give too much away, but that's also going to be scoring well for me. Um, Not just for animated television, not just for comedy television, but just television in general, it is incredible. And while I did say season five was not quite as good as season four, it was still great. Season six is right there next to season four. It's probably a slightly below, but it's hard. It's almost like apples and oranges, right? The tone weirdly has changed a lot from season four to season six. But in terms of sheer comedy value and jokes, season six is maybe the best so far. Um, but you also have those sentimental episodes as well. The obvious one, and Maggie makes three. Um, All-time great Simpsons episode, as is Treehouse of Horror 5. Those are both easy top 10 Simpsons episodes. They would probably make most top 10 lists that you'd find online. Um, and yeah, with these sort of Golden Age Simpsons, there are only really a couple skippable episodes out of whatever it ends up being, 22 to 25, which is an incredible hit rate. And then even then, the weaker A plots can have solid B plots, and every single episode has great jokes. So, you know, it's uh it's just a juggernaut at this in the, of this era, and in some ways I'll be glad when it falls off because I'm running out of things to say about it because it's The Simpsons. We all know The Simpsons. The Simpsons in this era is brilliant. So another 8.3, just giving it the edge over The Kingdom, mainly for its highs in those two episodes, and it had more episodes to get to that average. So yeah, number two. I think that's was it number two last year as well. I think two second places in a row, but really stacked
Yeah,
year. So no, nothing to be ashamed of.
sounds about right. This is probably one of our more varied lists, even though we may have a couple overlap. My number two is probably going to be a little bit controversial, but it's a comfort show. I'm talking about season one of Friends. I caught into Friends around the time that it was winding down, and I don't know, it's just always been that for me. Probably needs like no introduction what it's about. Six friends in New York, living their lives. Has like, comedic episodic stories, but also dedicates itself to like some more like a long form um arcs with some drama involved. For the inaugural season, the big thing is like the will they won't they between Ross and Rachel. And I'm always a sucker for will they won't they storylines. This is probably one of the most famous. You got Ross dealing with prospective fatherhood. I think the cast plays off each other really well, um, even though they're still working out a little bit of the characterizations in a couple instances. But they do hold their storylines really well. Uh, like I think they're still developing a bit, and the show's still finding its voice. But I still think, as far as like debuts in the '90s go, it's right up there for me. And Matthew Perry in the early days of this show, so funny to me. I'd say the clear standouts of the season would be the one with all the poker, and then the one with the blackout, which I think are generally considered uh, highlights of the show in general, anyways. Um, so yeah, this probably comes as a little bit of a surprise, but I do gravitate towards like the earlier part of this show, so probably expect it to show up again at some point.
Nice. Never dived in, never really appealed to me personally, but I can't say I've ever like sat down and concentrated on a full episode of Friends. It's been on loads of times when I've been in the room, but yeah, maybe one day, maybe one day. Now I've got to hit you with some quick fire honorable mentions. I've got five. So I'm just gonna fly through them. I'll go in from furthest away from making to the list to the closest. So knowing you, knowing me, knowing you with Alan Partridge, a really fun little debut chat show spoof season. I got Batman the Animated Series season two, which was really good. I didn't even know it existed until after 1992 because Netflix only had the first season and didn't sort of let me know that there were more episodes. So thanks, Netflix. Cracker season two, darker than the first season, but it's just a far more competitive year, so it was never really going to get onto the list. And the two I'm really sad to not have on are the X-Files season two, which I think is a slight improvement on the first one, and like Andrew said, mainly because of the mythology episodes rather than the episodic cases of the week. Even though there were a couple really good ones like Humbug, I really like that one. And then just missing the list is Homicide: Life on the Street season three, which you may have noticed I've not talked about season two yet, which is a slight deviation into melodrama compared to the first two seasons. But I'll talk about that more when I get to my number one, I guess, because you know what it's going to be now. Uh, any honorable mentions on your end?
Yeah, there's a bunch of ongoing series that we're still going strong for me. Um, I mean, I've spoken about Home Improvement, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I watched The Critic, which I think is really cool, like on a gag level. The stories don't tend to grip me on an emotional level as much as, say, The Simpsons did, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of Family Guy, where if you want just like a little snippet of something, then you get some great moments there. And probably my closest thing um, to making the list was the third season of Are You Afraid of the Dark, which I think might be the best one of the series. It's probably the most consistent, which you don't always get consistency with anthology horror shows, especially. But um, ended up having other five that I couldn't turn down, so that was probably the closest cut there. Are You Afraid of the Dark?
As alluded to, my number one is Homicide: Life on the Street season 2. Now, this is kind of cheating. There's only 4 episodes, but it's kind of a mini season, but it ends up with an average of an 8.8, which is absolutely titanic. Um, and we were sort of discussed previously when something would top my Twin Peaks average, which I think was 8.6 in 1990. This again, it does kind of feel like cheating because of the so few episodes, but all 4 episodes are really great. In particular, Bop Gun, the premiere, featuring a fantastic guest performance from Robin Williams, and Black and Blue, which is yet another demonstration of Andre Braugher's titanic presence as a performer and how he can just command everything in a scene. Really, really, really impressive. And I think the big difference, both for this season and season 3 from the first season, is that it really becomes more of an ensemble. The first season really focuses on Andre Braugher and Kyle Secker's characters the most, whereas this season allows for more depth within the supporting cast, and you get even more of that in season 3, which is definitely the best aspect of season 3. Just really stacked, and characters I thought that I didn't really like or care about or care for, I found myself really getting attached to in such a small span of episodes. It was really effective. In particular, Melissa Leo as Kay Howard, one of the biggest beneficiaries of this change. She is fantastic, and I didn't really care for the character in the first season. She really gets to shine. There are serial elements arriving, but it's still mostly case of the week. Again, the serialized nature would be emphasized with kind of mixed results in season 3, mainly due to it airing out of order, which is a whole other frustrating discussion to have. Um, it's kind of one of those Homicide: Life on the Street walked so blank show could run kind of shows, you know. But it had this like small period from like midway through season 1 to, you know, through season 2, and then about half to 2/3 of season 3 where it was must-watch television. And I'm grateful to have watched it. I'm told that it is downhill from here, but season 2 was absolutely fantastic, and loads of great performances and just good, really, really good TV.
Gotta love a short and sweet season in an era where you tend to get 20 plus episodes of hour-long dramas.
Well, yeah, I think that's why I think season 3 was a bit of a mixed bag, even though I did think it was really good overall, is that you went from 9 episodes in season 1 to 4 episodes in season 2 to 20 episodes in season 3, and suddenly they're working with a whole different framework, right? With the same amount of time to make the season. So, yeah.
Right. Well, it probably comes as no surprise. Back at the top for me, of course, Simpsons, season 6. Comes quite close to rivaling 4 as my favorite season of the series. Probably give the edge to 4, but there are really some ridiculously strong episodes here. Itchy and Scratchy Land, Trios of Horror 5, Homer the Great, and Maggie Makes 3, just to name a few. First half or so in particular is really strong. They do a good job, I think, of taking some of the wackier humor from 5, but balancing out of it again with the character work, I think. Whereas 5 tended to kind of lean towards more of the comedy overall, I would say. They don't shy away from the absurdity still, but the stories here are maybe a little bit more grounded and focused again. The animation, still dynamic and well directed, but the Simpsons look feels like the classic Simpsons look at this point. They were kind of working their way through the styles. This is kind of the the look you'll get for at least the rest of their classic run. You pretty much see that here. Good example I always point out in like 3 and 4 and 5, you have the bigger pupil Simpsons that kind of stand out. I see this season and I think of it just as The Simpsons in its prime, which is not a small feat for the show. Already 6 seasons in, like how many shows can you say that about? 6th season is one of, if not the best. And yet here we are over 30 years later as we speak with it still going somehow. I know. But yeah, that'll be my winner for 1994.
So, episode of the year, I went for Treehouse of Horror 5 from The Simpsons season 6. Definitely my favorite Simpsons episode. I used to have a DVD with this one and Treehouse 6, and I think 13 was also on it. The one with Pierce Brosnan. Was it 11? I don't remember. Anyway, this one was always my favorite, even though I liked the other two as well. All 3 segments are absolute gold dust classic, brilliant. Just every second of this episode is fantastic, and it's one of the greatest TV episodes of all time, in my opinion. And then my honorable mention to Bop Gun, that episode I mentioned with Robin Williams, and a very young Jake Gyllenhaal as well. So yeah, that's my episode of the year. What about you?
Can't argue with that. I also have a Simpsons pick, predictably. I'm going with the other huge one, and Maggie Makes Three. Consider the flashback episodes in the classic run an underrated component in kind of establishing our understanding of the characters, at least the ones we more or less follow in the original canon. There's only about a handful of them, but I feel like we know the background so well through these like glimpses into their past. Like this one does a great job of showing the Simpsons world shortly before the timeline of the show, with Homer getting the job at the bowling alley, Marge becoming pregnant with Maggie. There's some funny stuff here, especially like the hilarious sequence leading up to Homer finding out about it. But what really sets it apart is that emotional hook of the ending with the sign, right up there with Lisa's first word for my favorite on the series. And it kind of shows when they could pull up the heartstrings without being ironic. They could.
Yeah, well said. Great, great episode. One of my favorites. Performance of the year for me was a no-brainer. It's got to be Andre Braugher from Homicide: Life on the Street seasons 2 and 3. He's brilliant in both as Frank Pembleton, probably the most beloved character on the show. And I mean, he is the obvious standout, but you've also got Yaphet Kotto and Melissa Leo and Daniel Baldwin and all these great actors, and then guest performances from Robin Williams and Steve Buscemi, and that are really powerful as well. Robert Morse as well is really good. So yeah, it's got to be Andre Braugher, but I'll just shout out the whole cast of that show.
Awesome. I'm a huge Andre Braugher fan for a future series that we may cover way down the line. I'm going with, I guess you could call it a legacy pick, but I feel like this is the moment to recognize him, Dan Castellaneta. Always a tricky name to get in there. Feels like just a really strong year for Homer. If anyone doesn't know, he does several huge voices on The Simpsons, Homer included. So you got in Maggie Makes Three, Homer the Great, Homie the Clown, his segments in Trios of Four or Five, Who Shot Mr. Burns, so much great Homer stuff. You got Grandpa and Krusty having their own episodes. Even Groundskeeper Willie feels like he's really making a showing here. And of course, I'm mentioning all these because the one man voices them all, and I think it's as good a year to recognize his voice work.
Yeah, great call. I've not really been doing the voice actors, but yeah, awesome pick. And before we finish up, let's look ahead briefly to 1995, which I don't really have much to say about. I think it's a bit of an unknown for me, and there's a lot of stuff that I'm yet to see. I feel like I have less of a built-up back catalogue of shows, so I'm intrigued. There's a couple debuts I'm interested by. What about you? How are you feeling? Do you think it'll compare to 94?
I already have a couple in mind. Um, I'm not sure if it's going to exceed the peak for me of Simpsons season six, but there might be more great seasons to consider here. I expect a hefty amount of carryover from at least the pool to consider. I think the options I have now, I'm counting at least four shows I've included somewhere that I already don't have in my top five, and that can only grow. So we'll see what happens. Should be fun.
Yeah, it's I think it's only going to get harder every year now. We've got a kind of the first modern golden age of TV is on the horizon, so hope to for you to join us for all of it. Thanks again, Andrew, for joining me, and hopefully we'll see you again sooner than the gap between the last two episodes. Thanks a lot for
Looking forward
watching,
to it.
and
Thank
yeah,
you.
cheers.